Hey, I'm Jason.
I'm Kirk.
Hey, we're here on the west side of St. Louis, both of us, turns out, and we're excited to be a part of this pre-show. Welcome to the pre-show. This isn't even the show. This is just the show before the show. It's what we call the pre-show. Kirk, tell them about what's going on today.
Yeah, today we want to share some things that are close to us, close to our heart, things that we've learned along the way that we didn't necessarily weren't very good at in the beginning of ministry, but we believe it will make life better this year. Okay, ministry is tough already. Ministry is a challenging. It's a challenging adventure, whether you're a senior pastor or you're a comms director or you're a creative team member. We believe there's one thing you could do differently this year that would take the stress level down and increase morale. That it will, as a church, it'll save you money. It will make everything you do more effective. It'll let you get more of your church involved in the things you're doing. And it's going to increase your ability to respond to the world around you as things change, in case that has been your experience the last year. And maybe it sounds like we're overhyping that, but I really believe it's true. I really believe that planning ahead, planning in advance, planning your calendar year will do all of those things and more. But we understand, even as I say that word planning, some of you shuddered a little bit. Some of you are like, oh, wait a minute. And there are challenges. We get it. Jason, what are some of the challenges that people face as they go to plan a church's calendar?
Well, I know for me, when I was responsible for that, whether as a lead pastor or executive pastor, communications pastor, one, I didn't know if I knew how to do it. I didn't know to do it. I think there's also often a spiritual component. Like, are we even supposed to do that? And so, and then right now in this COVIDian era, if you will, like so many crises, so many changing things. But boy, I think we have some resources to show today, examples, stories, and how-tos that show that even in the midst, especially in the midst of all of that, we should. Again, we're from the west side of St. Louis today, but I'd love to know where you guys are watching from. So you can drop that in the comments, or if you're ready to log in, there's also a link. This is just the pre-show. This is going to be a free webinar. We're going to be giving away a ton of resource, hopefully as much value as we possibly can to help you plan a very effective church calendar in 2021. But you got to click that link. You got to jump over to the free webinar. But whether you're here, you're watching on this live, we'll be live here for another 8 minutes or so. And then we'll be jumping over there, invite everybody. Maybe you're watching this, you're like, man, church planning, church calendar. I know somebody who needs to see this. Feel free to share this video with them right now. Share the link, and we'll check you out over there. But go ahead and let us know where you're watching from.
And again, we're looking at we're talking to church leaders. We're talking to comms directors, creative team members, wherever you are in that spectrum, you're involved in helping make it happen for a church throughout the year. We've got some great resources that I think are going to help you out. Because we get it. Sunday is always coming, and that's one of the challenges that makes it hard to plan ahead. You're never more than 6 days away from Sunday, and sometimes it just feels like it takes everything you've got, all your team's commitment, just to get ready for that every single week. But I think we can help your team gradually plan that out further and get out of that cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. We got people already posting. Facebook, Sarah says hi. Grace Church right here. Great church right here in the greater St. Louis area. Awesome. Looks like we got some logging in from Kansas City, Nashville, Fishers, Indiana. Awesome. Welcome to the conversation. And that's what we hope this is. In fact, at the end, we'll be doing some Q&A at the very end of the webinar. It is an hour-long webinar. We are recording this, and if you sign up, we'll be sending the link out to you for that. Lots of great downloads to help your planning happen better. So it's a free webinar, free resources, opportunity to help you get your plans. Maybe some of you may already have some plans established in 2021. We're also going to be unpacking some ways that a communication team can best communicate internally and then externally in 2021. So even if you already have some idea of where you're going on the calendar this year, I think it's going to be a great resource for you. What are we covering today, Kirk?
Yeah, like you mentioned, Jason, one, we want to help you plan without losing your ability. In fact, we think that actually you can raise both at the same time. But to do that, we want to give you some planning practices that help keep your whole team and their families healthy. And that's a passion point for us. We think you can do ministry and you can be healthy. Like those two don't need to be an either or scenario. We can help you set up your church's creative department like a creative agency. And that may be a new thought to you. I think there's some huge advantages that will help everything run more smoothly. And finally, we want to give you some step-by-step principles on how to plan your church's year, including your sermon series, your big events, and organize it around the felt needs of the people you're trying to reach.
I love that. I love it. And the context of all of our lives is a global pandemic right now. And every one of my friends in ministry, I mean, even, almost all my friends are rewriting their job descriptions right now. They're rewriting their organizational charts. And some of them are like, man, we just redid our organizational chart. Now we're rewriting it. And which is kind of normal. That is a normal phenomenon for growing organizations. And some of them are like, we're not growing. We're just redoing it all. Or then we start talking about planning with them and they're like, this has been said more than once. There's no way I can plan because of just how crazy this is. So we're going to be talking about tools, resources, mindsets on how to overcome that. And I'll tip the hand a little bit. It's kind of like if you didn't know how much money was going to come in any given month to your personal income. So you say, well, then I can't set a budget. I don't know how much money I'll have. It's impossible for me to know how much money I have. Therefore, I can spend as much money I want wherever I want. False. Like, no, it might be more difficult to set a budget if you don't know how much is coming in. But you should absolutely, in times of difficulty, in times of uncertainty, set a baseline. So we're going to be talking about how to set a baseline of communication for your team that, like Kirk said, it won't cause you to be able to lose agility or your ability to go with the flow. I think it'll actually increase it. So again, free webinar. We'd love to have you a part of it. If you know somebody who you think this kind of conversation would be applicable, feel free to share the link, share this live video with them now. We're going to be giving away some downloadables, a calculator. Kirk, tell me a little bit about the timeline calculator.
One thing that we've realized in working with churches for 15 years now is that there's not a lot of clarity on how long does it actually take. How far back do we need to start planning in order to do X, Y, and Z to promote such event? And so we've been working on putting together a calculator that would simply give you that framework to work backwards. Hey, you've got this event on such and such date. You want to start it promoting it on such and such date, and we want these things. When do we need to start talking about that? When do we need to have this so that we can start working on that? So that'll be a link that we'll send you to help you help you know when you need to start on a project in order to do everything you want to do and do it well. We've got just a couple more minutes here before we're going to hop over there. So make sure you're getting set up, you're clicking the link. But tell us, what are your challenges? When you think about planning, I know you immediately thought of some, that's hard because. What are the challenges for your context? Let us know in the comments, and we'd love to get to those in the Q&A later. Jason, what else are we going to walk away with today?
I think one is empathetic planning. So this isn't just autocratic. I know the direction. You don't have to be Moses here coming down from the mountain with the direction for the future. Empathetic planning that feels and thinks like others might be feeling and thinking, those you're leading and those you want to reach. Empathetic planning, healthy teams. You mentioned it, Kirk. I believe in it. You can do ministry and you can be healthy. Agile teams that can respond to just about anything, along with a step-by-step planning for your church's entire year. So make sure you go to the registration link, and we'll see you in the webinar.
Hey, welcome. I'm Kirk.
And I'm Jason. Welcome to the How Churches Can Plan 2021 and be ready for almost anything.
Yeah, getting into that, Jason. We've had some unique experiences that we've learned a few things along the way. I know that you personally, you've been in a lot of ministry contexts, churches of all sizes. When I first met you, back in the 20 some years ago,
1999.
yeah, in the 90s, you were an assistant high school Sunday school teacher. That's where I met you.
Big deal.
And then, came back later, and you'd become a young adult pastor at the church I was attending, and in fact, we're the national young adult ministry coordinator for the Saints of God. And then had an opportunity. You came up here to St. Louis, ended up planting a church, and I got to help you do that for a good chunk of time 10 years ago. But then you've gone on since then, and you've been a senior pastor, you've been an executive pastor, you've been a communication director. Jason, you've been in all sorts of contexts there, learned a few things.
I'm tired just listening to that. No, just kidding, but seriously, I'm feeling better now. No, and Kirk, you've been a big part of that. Honestly, we've partnered in ministry for a long time. I think you were always my go-to graphic artist and web developer, and the partnership we've had together at ArtSpeak Creative, honestly, has just been such a fun, fantastic experience leading church creatives, both those on our team. Now a couple dozen, but also getting to come alongside so many awesome life-giving ministries, churches, even some fantastic for-profits, and quite literally around the world, but definitely across the country. I just wanted to give a big ask right now. There's a lot of those, whether you've been a client or a friend, or you just saw this online. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the chat. I'd love to know where you're at. I'd also love to know like what church or ministry or organization that you're representing. In fact, our team, we've got a team of strategists, a team of creatives that are a part of ArtSpeak Creative. They're in the chat too. They'd love to get to know you, interact with you. There's going to be a Q&A at the very end. And so you can also drop your questions in there. And we've got people pulling those questions out to set us up right at the very end.
Awesome. So glad to have you, everyone, joining us today. Jason, what are we talking about exactly?
Yeah, we are talking about mindsets. We're talking about structure, and we're going to talk about how-tos plan your church calendar, the mindsets that are going to set you up for effective calendar planning. And we're going to talk about the structure of healthy communication department. And we're also going to end very, very practically some very, very great tools on how to plan your church's calendar. A church calendar, I think, that is going to make you better, right? So if the leaders, whether you're the lead pastor or creative or your executive director, it's going to make your communication better, even internally and then externally. And that's going to make you a better leader. It's going to help you lead the people that you're already leading well. And it's going to help you reach more people because you're going to be increasing your influence. What if you could be healthier and grow your influence?
Awesome. We'll be taking questions throughout the webinar, so feel free to ask whenever in the chat, and our team will serve those questions up to us at the end. So we'd love to get to those at the end of the webinar.
Yeah, when this webinar is over, just full disclosure right from the top, right? This isn't going to be a heavy pitch or a hard sale at the end of this. If you're watching right now, like stay to the end, because here's what's going to happen right at the very end. We're going to give you a church planning downloadable calendar, right? And we're also going to give you a custom church calendar planning calculator, right? In the pre-show, Kirk talked a little bit about that. This is an ability for you as a leader to know how long things should take in a healthy environment to have it created. So a church planning downloadable calendar, that's something that you can fill out, you can write your plans on, but also a calculator. That's a tool that's going to help you plan. If I need this by then maybe I should give this much lead time. And also we're going to give you a link for a free 30-minute calendar planning session with one of our team strategists. That's the team I get to lead at ArtSpeak, and I can't wait for you to meet them. They're going to ask you questions about your calendar planning that's already going. You can ask them questions that you might have that didn't get answered in the Q&A session here, but you can dream with you really about what could be accomplished even in these crazy times in 2021? What could dream with you, and then talk about some very practical ways to overcome some of the problems that you might be facing.
All right. But it all starts with the right mindsets, the right way of thinking about these things that will set you up for effective planning. And Jason, you've been using a phrase that has really been hitting home with people. Can you talk about that?
It's simple. I've found myself saying it as we're coaching clients and coaching ourselves. And here it is. It's the dichotomy is you can either plan ahead or you can burn out people. You can either plan ahead or burn people out. That's really what it turns into. Burnout, right, comes from just always chasing the urgent. You're completely out of margin. There's no time and it's rushed. And then all the work that you did do because it wasn't up to what you thought it could be. And you're just, listen, that's going to burn your team out. That's going to burn your family out. That's even going to burn you out. Some of you are like, yes, sign me up for that, counseling session. We can do that too. We're going to push back on the pushback, right? What I mean by that is there is often this pushback whenever we bring up the idea of planning, right? And the first one is we want to stay agile. We want to be flexible. We want to, and maybe then some people might even spiritualize it. We want to wait and hear what the Holy Spirit has to say, so we can't plan ahead.
That one's always funny to me because those of us who come from a background where we believe in the gifts of spirit and the gift of prophecy, you'd think we'd be the most planned out.
Right? Could he not speak ahead of time? But listen, or here's the big one right now, right? In the COVIDian season, everything's too turbulent. We can't plan ahead. But here's a foundational thought. It might be a new mindset. It's planning ahead actually allows you to be more agile. So that's the first mindset, is that planning ahead is about stewardship. It's about understanding that planning is like budgeting, right? Budgeting, no one's very good at budgeting when they first go to budget, right? But that doesn't mean you should never budget, right? Or like I mentioned in the pre-show, if just because you don't know how much money you might make in any given month, that doesn't give you the right to go spend as much as you want wherever you want. No, all the more you should set a foundation, a baseline of what you want to spend. And now we're not talking about dollars. I mean, in some ways it is. It's time. It's your effort. It's your energy. It's the morale and the enthusiasm of your team, which I would argue is even more valuable than just dollars and cents. So if you will take it like that, here's the new mindset. Think of planning as budgeting. Kirk, you had a good point about this earlier. Could you talk about how it really is a stewardship issue?
Stewardship comes into play anytime you have a limited resource. Most of us have limited money. Therefore, we've got to steward that well. We all have a fixed amount of time. We've got to steward that well. Like you said, Jason, there is another limited resource that I think we should take even more seriously. And that is the energy, the morale, the health of your team. Because like you were saying earlier, if you are always chasing the tyranny of the urgent, if it's always last minute, if they're always scrambling to get it together for this Sunday, you are going to burn through that energy and morale and health at a furious rate. That is where the burnout comes from. And so this is a practical issue, but it's also a ministry issue. Because as church leaders, we're called to care for not just the attenders, not just for the people outside the church, but for your team as well, for your staff, your volunteers. Are they healthy? Are they excited? Are they growing and thriving? Because listen, if your team isn't healthy, the people that you have the most influence over, if they're not healthy, they're stressed out, they're burning out, is the church going to be healthy? And so listen, planning ahead allows you to steward the effort, energy, the morale, the health of your team. And I'm not saying that you just need to lower your expectations. In fact, I think you can do the opposite. You can actually raise the bar and the energy and the morale if you will plan ahead. If you read Herding Tigers by Todd Henry, which is a great book about how to lead creative, which, by the way, I'm not just talking about the creative team. I'm not just talking about your video and your design team. If you work at a church, I'm going to guess you are creative. You are solving problems creatively constantly. Creatives need two things to thrive. They need stability and they need challenge. You've got to have both. If it's all stability, no challenge, they're bored stiff. They're going to go somewhere else. If it's all challenge and no stability, they are going to be burnt out. The bottom line is creatives want to do their best work. They're motivated by that. So if you will plan ahead in order to set them up for success, they will dive into it. They will give it their all. They will dream up things that will blow your socks off. And if they do that, they will feel fulfilled. They will have more creativity and more energy. And this leads us to step 2, because the bottom line is if you have that plan and you're providing both that stability and that challenge, you're setting them up for success. When you do have to make a last minute change, you're not scraping the bottom of an already empty energy reserve. Because here's mindset shift number 2. Plan your ministry calendar so you can lead people well when the plan has to change. Because plans will change, and that is okay. Like Eisenhower said, no battle was ever won by following the plan, but no battle was ever won without one. So a good plan will allow you to lead well through the change. Jason, can you give us an example here of how planning will help the leaders lead through that change?
Right. So let's just imagine you have a plan. You have a sermon series. You have those of you that aren't doing a messaging campaign. You have it all set. You're going to do it in February, and it's going to be called Happily Ever After, right? Just super creative. It's going to have hearts on it. And they designed a lot, set design and songs and art and a landing page. I mean, you could email drip campaign. I mean, you got it all. You're going to do it all, and you're going to do it well. And then, I don't know, something crazy happens. A global pandemic. It can happen. We all know that now, right? And now plans have to change. But let's just say it's mid-January. Or maybe the pastor has an epiphany. Epiphanies happen. We should get t-shirts and bumper stickers. Epiphanies happen, right? And all of a sudden, we aren't going to go towards that. We're going to go in a different direction. This is an opportunity because if you had planned ahead, you know what was already created. You know who already created it. You know the staff and even the volunteers. If you plan far enough out, you can now go to them and say, hey, listen, all that work isn't going to be wasted. We're just going to shelf it for now. In fact, I think it might even fit really well leading up into the holidays, how to prepare for November, December, where families are tough. We'll take that same relationship teaching and we'll teach it there. I need your help to shift. I know now because of the timeline, my expectations have to, I can't have all those moving pieces because now we only have 2 weeks where we were planned out 2 months. What can we do in the next 2 weeks? Here's where we have to go because of an emergency or an inspiration. But instead of so your expectations and turnaround times, that is important, but you're able to lead change really, really well if you're further planned out. Another way, I just thinking about it, would be if you're planned out and you know that message is coming, you know that you have graphics, you can have layered files. It's all done ahead of time. And then all of a sudden you're like, you know what? The first sermon isn't going to be called Happily Ever After. It's going to be called Happily Ever Laughter. And then we're going to talk about joy in the marriage. Now all you need to change is one word, but you planned ahead. So that design isn't in the works. It's already done. Now you can have to go in and make one small tweak to maybe a layered file rather than recreate something brand new or even interrupt the creative process right in the middle of it with an entirely different direction. I remember one time I was leading an event last minute. And at the end of that event, I wanted to thank those who had helped me set it up last minute, by the way. And I thanked them publicly. And afterwards, one of the individuals came up to me and said, Pastor, I would rather you not thanked me for that. And I was, oh, really? Why? Because you didn't give me enough time to prepare and do it to my best ability. I would have loved to have done it even better. Had I had a week instead of 2 days, then I would have loved to flex for you. And Honestly, I was convicted so had I planned ahead, it would have helped my agility. It would have helped my leadership rather than hurting it. So planning ahead will help your team. It'll help them well through even the most chaotic times. I believe that.
And there's something I'm hearing there, Jason, as you describe that makes me think of something that you talk a lot about, because I happen to know that you've discovered the secret to marital bliss. That also happens to work really well when you're planning a calendar. What is that?
Well, I don't know if my wife is watching. I don't know if I've mastered marital bliss yet, but I do. That is the direction, right? That's the aim. And my wife and I get invited on occasion to speak about communication principles in marriage, and it's a passion of ours. And we were preparing for a retreat. It was the end of 2019, right? Back when people did retreats, maybe someday again. And I'm a part of the John Maxwell coaching team. And so I loved his principles about leadership teams, executive teams from his book, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. And so my wife and I were looking at those principles, said, what if these apply? What if we could apply these to our marriage? Everyone communicates, few connect in marriage. So we did a whole retreat on it. And when we were putting all of that together, I realized that the principles that we were about to go teach on marriage were the same principles that you and I, Kirk, have been coaching our church clients through on how to get the word out about their ministries. It was the same principles. And if you boiled all those principles down to one word, to me, that word is empathy. Am I willing to do the difficult work to think and feel like the person I'm communicating to, right? Rather than just tell them, right? Rather than just say, hey, don't be mad at me for that. Which, by the way, that doesn't work. I've tried it. You don't need to ever again, right? But when I can say, you know what? I can imagine it feeling like this if that would have happened to me. I wonder if you're thinking something like I might have been thinking if I would have. You don't even have to agree with their perspective, but I do think the church for a long time, ministries for a long time, organizations all over the planet for a long time, just force declarations like, don't be mad at me for that. Get saved. Just join us. You just need to stop and then come over here and think like me. When really, I think the gospel is calling us to go and think like them and feel like they might think and feel, and then we can lead them somewhere good together.
That's good. And it flows both ways here, by the way. If you're a lead team, you're a leader, you need to have empathy with your team to understand, what is this ask that I'm about to deliver them? What is that going to mean for them? What is that going to mean for their family this weekend? What is that going to mean for the quality of life for the next month? But it also goes the other direction. If you are the one on the receiving end of the asks, you're a creative team member or somewhere in that team, that you need to empathize with that leader and understand what are the pressures they're feeling. What are they thinking through? What are they too busy right now to think about? And maybe I can think about their problems and get proactive. Come to them with solutions before they've even thought of the problem, because I was taking a minute to stand in their shoes and think ahead. Jason, you were a creative director at a church. How did that work out for you there?
Well, I mean, I think it's a lot easier to point fingers and blame everyone else for our frustration. And I know I do, and that's a general principle. But if we do the difficult work of empathizing, I think there can be some solutions. What I noticed right away, I took over the media department at a regional multi-site church. I noticed a pattern right away that staff members from every department would walk into the creative suite and they'd approach the designer. They'd go right up to his desk and they'd give him a last minute request. And then he'd be frustrated. And then we would just do that pattern all day, every day. That was the communication process of the church, right? And so here's that. I mean, it's not one that we want to live. And he would be frustrated at them, and they would be frustrated at him because it never, things weren't getting done when they thought it needed to get done. And he's like, well, I didn't get that project done because you came in with another last minute thing that I was still working on the other last minute thing. Just this downward cycle or maybe an upward one of escalation, right? And then people are just getting louder. So here's what I do for pastors, what we do at ArtSpeak as a strategist, and it really just get proactive. Here's how proactive empathy. You mentioned thinking through what the leadership might be thinking through, leadership understanding what the team might be thinking through. That's internal. We'll talk later about external, thinking through what your community might be thinking through. But get proactive. And here's some ways. I want to speak right to the creatives now, how they can help be empathetic, like you mentioned, towards their executive teams, towards these other leadership. Bring vision, bring ideas, apply that empathy to others. Don't just expect the empathy to be applied to you. We all want empathy applied to us. Think like me, right? But it takes the work to say, hey, here's what you might be thinking about. I went ahead and thought you might want this or this. Do either of those work? But you've got to be proactive. You can't wait for them to walk into your office and give you a task. They're going to walk in late and you're going to have a last minute task. So, but all of this, if you take responsibility for it, I think you have more control. You have more control than you think you have, right? If only you would plan ahead, which is what we're talking about today. Don't wait for the department to come in with their emergency. Plan ahead. And one of the ways we're able to do this well with the systems at ArtSpeak and the procedures that we have to make this happen, which is really takes us on to our next big topic. We're talking about different mindsets. And now we want to talk about how to set your communication department up so that it operates like an agency.
Yeah, and this is these are things that we've learned over the past 15 years of doing this for churches all over the country. But before we get into some of the nuts and bolts here, Jason, what mindset do you need to have as a creative department if they're going to think like an agency?
Realize that you have clients. If you're going to think like an agency, first you have to realize that you have clients, and then you got to treat them like they're clients. Kirk and I have an agency, and we've got a whole team of creatives, and none of them get paid. We don't get paid. We don't have a job. We don't have an agency if we don't have clients. But here's the cool thing: if you have an internal agency, you have internal clients. They're built in. That is awesome. Every agency has high leverage clients, important clients. Let me just say, your pastor and the executive team, that's a big client. You definitely want to be serving that client very, very well. You also have other clients, maybe clients, youth ministry. You have a youth pastor, a women's ministry, a kids ministry. And so, man, we've got some clients that have like every single ministry under the sun, right? If Christianity has invented it, they've got it there under the umbrella. That's a lot of clients. To serve those clients well, I recommend setting up that communication department like you're an agency. So, Kirk, let's get everybody some resources. What tools, these are we want to get practical. What are some tools that we use that everyone needs so that their creative department can run like an agency?
Yeah, and so here's the nuts and bolts if you're looking for that. A set of tools that'll help you run more efficiently. One, you need a project management software package. We use Asana. There's others out there, Basecamp, Trello, whatever fits for you. But you need a place where you can keep track of tasks organized by project, where you can assign those tasks to people with a due date, because you need a place where it's real. For us, if it's not in Asana, it's not real. It's not a real task. You need that clarity so everybody knows exactly what they need to do and when they need to do it by, and you can keep everybody on the same page. So you need that. You also need a place for internal team communication. We use Slack for this. There's other tools that are similar. This allows us to organize conversations, ongoing conversations by big project or for us client. And we also have some general channels that I'd recommend for you. We have a feedback channel where all work, all designs, everything that could use some feedback, some collaboration, it goes in that channel. And we're all able to collaborate, encourage each other, and give some ideas. We have a wins channel where we can celebrate. We can share gratitude for one another. That's a great morale booster. And we have a status channel where everybody can report on a daily basis. This is what I'm working on. And this is how busy I am right now. This is how busy I feel. So that might mean, hey, I could take on some more, or I am way busy. Please don't ask me for anything more right now. And that just keeps everybody on the same page, whether you're working remotely from home or if you're all in the same office, you're all on the same page. We also use a shared drive. We use Google Drive with FileStream. That lets us act as if we were all connected to one huge computer. And so we don't have to manually download files and then upload files. It's all just connected. It's all handled for us, and means that everybody always has access to all of the source files they need. That was a game changer when we were able to set that up. And finally, time tracking. Now, this may sound like a funny one to you, but this is why this is important. Do you know how much time your team spent getting ready for Easter last year? Do you know if the items that you spent the most time on were also the most important? Do you know where people's time and energy and effort are going? And unless you've been doing some time tracking, you don't. I'm going to say that you don't. There's lots of suites out there for time tracking. Harvest is one of them. But use that data in order to understand where your team's effort is going and to ask the question, is this going where we really want it to go? So that you can be more and more effective as you analyze that. But Jason, let's talk about something that you do for our clients that makes all of these systems work.
Yeah, it's really at the center of it. It's at the center of the relationship. It allows us to be a virtual creative agency. It allows us to design as our clients and not just for them. And it's scheduling regular strategy meetings with our clients. So let me just say, if you're going to set up your creative department, schedule regular meetings, strategy meetings with your clients. This is what that means. Not the whole creative team doesn't have to go. You don't have to go to all of them, but have somebody who's going to come in, meet with the youth pastor and talk about all the stuff that the youth pastor wants to plan for the next 2 or 3 months. If you're just getting started, maybe the next 2 or 3 weeks, right? Just get out ahead of it as far as you can, but you're going to dream together. And now all of a sudden the creative team becomes a ministry partner. All of a sudden the artists are helping form and shape what the things are called and how they are. You become a consultant, and every artist I know, every creative I know wants to be a consultant first. You don't want to just push pixels. You don't want to just turn that triangle and turn it pink. And you're like, why? That's going to ruin it. But they just said, because if you get out ahead of it, if you be proactive, schedule a regular meeting, you're going to become more and more positioned as a consultant and help them. Now you're helping them think ahead.
You know what? If you implemented nothing else from this webinar, that's it right there. If you can get that going, if you're a creative team member and you can start doing this, this may change your life forever. But how often should that happen, Jason?
Monthly meetings, I think, are a must. All right. So if for us at ArtSpeak, it has to be at least once a month. We have an ongoing client. No matter how many hours they're spending with us, we've got to get a touch point once a month to stay on page. So maybe it's maybe it's a volunteer-led ministry, but you are going to have to design as them. You are going to have to communicate with them and for them and have them a part of the church calendar. Then you got to connect with them at least once a month. For maybe for department heads, for larger ministries, it might be every other week. I would highly recommend, if you can, weekly meetings with the executive team, right? That, again, they're setting the big direction. The main communication comes from them. You want to make sure you're on pace for them. One meeting, even 2 meetings. I don't want to overload anyone with meetings. You might even just be a part of, the communication meeting, the preaching meeting, just a part of it. Or you got to touch base though, no less than once a month. But boy, for where the most communication is coming from, I would say weekly.
Awesome. And real quick, Jason, you came up some ways in terms of just arranging the space that made this planning process easier. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we found in the executive office at the church I served at, there was a giant dry erase board calendar, which was a beautiful thing. Dry erase boards are my happy place, full confession. But this one was magnetic, and you could put dates, you could draw on the dates, and then you could put events on there. You could have different magnets that symbolize different things. And that was the official church calendar. It was in dry erase, so they could change it at any time. Fine, there's your agility. But it gave a tool to plan ahead. what I did is I found that the church also owned another one that was very, very similar. And I had them install it inside the media team suite. And then I set up a high top table and some lamps and some candles and, brought in some good coffee and began to schedule those meetings that we talked about ahead of time. So we could sit down with the small groups pastor and say, tell me about small groups. So what are you dreaming about? You've done a small group Sunday 3 times a year for the last 3 years. You're going to do another one? And the answer was, yes, of course we're going to do another one. When are you planning that? And they might pick a date on the calendar, and then we look over. There's the calendar. It's on the wall. This is actually the exact calendar that's in the executive suite. The date you picked is also the date that pastor was going to do this other big thing. You're welcome to go and ask him if you also want small group Sunday on there. And the person's like, no. I know that won't change. Let's do it the next week. Okay, great. Do you have your content ready? No. Well, why do I need my content ready? Well, do you want all the print things and all the cards and all the things that you want, the lanyards and the shirts and the wraps and the banners? Well, of course I do. Okay, well, that takes 5 to 10 days to order. That takes 5 or 10 days to design. We're going to need content by the end of the week if you want to do that date and avoid rush shipping fees. At that point in history, rush shipping fees was about a 4 or 5 annual expense. And it was always the media team's fault for ordering it late. But what the calendar did was set a healthy boundary of planning and budgeting, real dollars and time, to show we can save money by planning ahead and put more and more attention and accountability into those. There's accountability and systems, man. They go hand in hand. So having that was key. What I ended up finding was even between meetings, leaders of ministries were coming into the media department, the communication department, to plan their next event. And then we're there as a resource. We're there as a friend. We're there as a ministry partner. We're not the ones telling them, no, you can't have that graphic by then. We're there saying, here's how to actually have your ministry dreams come true.
And so you may not have a ginormous whiteboard calendar, but we're going to send you a downloadable, printable 18-month wall calendar. You can print them out and arrange them on the wall, and there you go. There's your planning space. We're also we'll be sending you a church planning calculator. We talked about that earlier, that help you understand exactly how far out you need to plan, so that you can do this in time to do this in time to do this, so you're ready to go by the time you have the event without rushing everything along the way. So we'll email you those tools after the webinar. But it's great to have all these ideas, Jason. But if you're a creative director, not the senior leader, how do you implement this?
Well, before you do any of this, it's very important to get buy-in from the senior pastor and executive team on your new systems, right? And I mentioned this last, but it's probably the most important. And you get that, you can achieve that buy-in by expressing empathy. Here's what I know you're wanting to accomplish. Here's what I hear the vision you're headed. It's right. It's the senior leadership's job to chart the course and to cast vision. But it's big picture. It's actually our job as department heads and leaders within that church to also bring corresponding vision up. I heard you wanted to go there. How about this or that? I heard you wanted to help marriages in 2021 because they've been very, it's just been a strain on marriage through this pandemic. Here's a sermon series that another church did that I saw. Here's one that I think we could come up with ourselves, or do you have something better? You're bringing vision. You're bringing ideas. You're bringing creativity up. I think you might like this sermon series or this one. And then he says, no, I don't like either of those. Oh, cool. That's not when we walk away sad or mad. That's where we go, okay, help me, Jesus. Let me go back and figure out what he might want next and bring up more vision. Do you have any other direction? Here's where else you can go. Always come to a meeting with more than one idea. All right. Because if you come to with a meeting with one idea, it's going to feel like defensive. I'm defending my one idea. No, come with multiple ideas. And then if those don't work, come up with some more ideas. So, and you can also research to do that. But The other part of this is create a memorandum of understanding. And I would recommend doing that in conjunction with the executive team and with your lead pastor. A memorandum of understanding is going to cover communication protocols, maybe the new portals in which these ministries are going to request. It's going to talk about the timelines and turnarounds, the expectations that ministries should have, that no, you're not just going to walk in and expect on a Tuesday that you're going to have a graphic for your annual retreat that you do every single year by Thursday. Like, you should have planned ahead. Here's the new protocols for doing that. And I also think you could outline some tiered events. We can talk more about that in a second, but Kirk, right? It's January. A lot of churches are thinking about how to start planning. We're going to walk you through it, right? We're going to walk you through 6 steps to planning your year right now. Where do we start?
Absolutely. So step 1, maybe it won't surprise you. Step 1, start with why. Start big picture. Let's zoom out and let's make sure that everybody understands the big why. And listen, you could say, well, why do you exist? And maybe like, well, we're a church. We exist for the Great Commission. Go make disciples. Okay. That's good. It's biblical. But there's also 3 other churches within a mile of yours, if not 30. So what is your why? Why does your church exist? And does everybody on your team understand the answer to that question? Do they know it? What is your how? So if that's your why, maybe you're there to reach people. Great. That's our why. We're here to reach people. How? How is your church going to reach those people? What makes your church unique? What are your core values? Does everybody on your team know what those are? Maybe you've got them on the wall, but maybe you need to dust that off and make sure everybody understands how that's supposed to play out in your church. And finally, who is your who? Who exactly are you trying to reach? Every church wants to reach everybody. I get that. But there's probably some people that your church are best suited to reach, are most passionate to reach, are people in your community that nobody else is reaching. And you may decide as a church, you know what, that's one of our who's. But I'm not saying you have to have just one answer to this. You might have a few who's that you want to reach, but you need to get clear about who those are. What are you uniquely passionate about? Who are you uniquely suited to reach? Because listen, you don't need to compete with all those other churches out there. And we'll get to this in a minute when it comes to calendar planning. If there's a church just down the road that does a blow the roof off Christmas event every single year, maybe you choose not to compete with that. But, and this is where our branding process really comes in. And you could download our branding questionnaire to help you zero in on some of these uniquenesses about your church. What makes your church unique? And identify who is it that you want to reach. And this, by the way, this is our communication triangle. We're borrowing this from Rethink Communication from Phil Bodle. We've just implemented this into a lot of our conversations at ArtSpeak. Communication triangle draws it out this way. You've got over here, this is who you are as an organization. On the other side, this is who you're trying to reach. And up here, here's things that they want for themselves, felt need. Come up at night. And over here, this is things that you want in your organization. This is your vision. What do you want for them? There is a place where those things overlap, and that is the shared win. Now, you need to understand, what are the obstacles between them and that shared win? What is the process that would take people from wherever they are right now, maybe get them connected to your church, maybe get them in a community, building some relationships, maybe teach them some important principles, maybe draw them to some important decisions, so that at the end of the year, you get to hear the life story change, the stories of life change that you want to hear. And I think that's the final thing that you should get very clear on. At the end of this year, what are those stories? How will lives have been changed this year because of what you've done as a church? Because if you'll get clear on those goals, you'll get clear on who you are, who you're trying to reach. Now you know what you need to do in order to start filling up that calendar. You can brainstorm based on that. You can explore, hey, what are the things that we can put on this calendar that would lead people through this process methodically. Maybe this event leads to this sermon series, leads to this retreat, so that at the end of the year, we hear those stories of life change. So that gets to step 2 here. Use felt needs to develop a strategy. You can think of those processes. How do you get attention, build trust, and then don't drop the ball? How do you keep leading them on to the next step? And you can use the calendar year, to predict those felt needs. Most churches have 3 to 5 all hands on deck events every year. You probably already know what those are. Christmas and Easter are usually gimmies for most churches. You should probably plan for those. Just remember that if you're not the family tradition church, maybe those might not be your best opportunities to reach people. They might be going to mom's church and not yours. But every year presents some big opportunities. Jason, what are some of those that we could be thinking about?
Well, just like you said, you can look for ways where if it's really noisy and everyone's promoting their, singing Christmas tree or whatever other thing that is out there for Christmas or Easter's cantatas, and you might not be the tradition yet. It might take a lot to get in front of come to this church on Easter or Christmas. I look for where people aren't talking about coming to church. Blue ocean moments, to steal Kim and Mawborn is the authors there. Blue ocean strategy. But like, for example, New Year's resolutions, right? New Year's. Okay. It's post Christmas actually. So all the churches have already spent their marketing budget on that, and they're thinking forward to Easter. Now you're able to say, hey, it's a brand new year. And I say New Year's resolutions, and some people are like, oh man, I don't know if that's even, Christians aren't supposed to, New Year's revelations, please. Okay, well, call it whatever you want. People, your community, your neighbors are thinking about, it's a brand new year. I want this year to be better than last year. And now you can come alongside that and say, hey, new vision, new health, new life. You can have that. And here's a foundational truths for it. Give us this month. Here's what we're talking about. New Year's resolutions. I think the same, in a very similar way, back to school calendar reset. Chris Hodges with Church of the Highlands and the ARC team taught you and I that in 2009 about come alongside calendar planning moments. When your community's planning their calendars, that's when you should be out in front of them. Not just Easter and Christmas, but New Year's and back to school. I also think if you think about Easter, I think it also presents a blue ocean moment, and that's post-Easter. Mm-hmm. Everyone ramps up for big events, but what are you doing to build away from them? What stories are you telling? Or even what are you calling them to? What's the message series that's on the pastor's heart and the communication team after Easter? Build that one out so that, and even very media wise and very engaging, so that when you have everyone there on Easter, you could say, give us the next 4 weeks, and here's what God, this felt need in your life is going to be accomplished.
Absolutely. And so that now we're ready to start filling up the calendar. We've developed that strategy. We've looked at the calendar. We understand the felt needs. We understand how our process interacts with those felt needs. So now let's start putting stuff on the calendar. And so a few things to think about here. Here's a principle. If everything is loud, then nothing is heard. If everything is shouting, then people just close their ears. So you're going to have to be strategic in what gets full billing and what maybe is a little bit quieter. You're going to have to be mindful of that stewardship dynamic here. You can't do everything for every event without exhausting your budget, your time, and your energy. And you need to think about that process that we've been talking about. Not just filling up the calendar to fill up the calendar, but how are we strategically moving people through that process to change their life? Great ministry isn't about doing more things, about being intentional about what we are doing. I heard that quote recently. I should have an attribution for that. But you need to make sure that you have a way to make sure the departments are getting what they need without competing for attention. And Jason, you developed a system at your last church that really helped communicate this, that really helped build a system around this planning principle. What is that?
Well, it's tiered events. It's part of that memorandum of understanding I mentioned earlier. And yes, I was a part of creating one at one church, but now been a part with the ArtSpeak team and consulting other churches and other organizations on tiering their communication. What I mean by that is there are some things that are very, very important. And you're like, you're pulling out all the stops, right? That organ is going to be blasting. This every ability that you have to communicate, you're going to be communicating about that one big deal, right? In fact, every ministry, you want every ministry pointing to this one thing, right? That's a tiered one event. Now, you can't have those every week. Like you said, if everything's loud, then nothing's loud. Nothing can be heard, right? So, but every ministry might have their big push. For me, when I was a young adult pastor, it was retreat. For a youth group, it might be a camp. Whatever it is, for small groups, it might be those and that might be an integral part of the executive team's direction, getting people in groups. So it might be, they might get 2 or 3 of those a year where they're wanting to push everyone to be a part, and every ministry can be a part of those. Now you might have tier 1 events, and really this should be something that you customize for your communication. But having a tier 1 event that, some rules, department might only have 1 or 2 tier 1 events a year. No tier 1 event can take place within 2 weeks of another department's tier 1 event. Again, it's not loud. It's loud, and then, recover. And then, hey, this other big thing we're doing. Tier 1 events require at least 3 months lead time. Again, your details might change, but have some rules. Then you might have some tier 2 and tier 3 events where you might get 4 tier 2 events or 8 tier 3 events. And it just might be, you're not going to be an announcement. There's not going to be a video about it, but there might be a t-shirt. There might be some invite cards. There might be a flag. There might be some signups. Or these events need less time to plan because there's going to be fewer resources going into them. And again, all of this sets an expectation for what's going to be communicated, by whom, and why. Everyone's going back to that why of ministry. And now you're creating, again, you're setting yourself up as an agency to help the church focus on its main goals. And these lower tier events, they'll only be allowed maybe to target communication efforts to specific audiences. Again, customize it however you want. Another big key in this, in those, whether it's a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3, is build up to those events and away from those events. Kirk mentioned telling what stories do you want told at the end of the year? Well, there's a hint. Tell the stories throughout the year, right? Everybody ramped up for Easter. What happened at Easter? Tell people. I was famous for ramp up, right? Even if you spread those out, people want to know, did it work? Did what we were doing accomplish anything? Help them by telling those stories. And that's setting boundaries, and it's setting healthy communication direction.
And with it, as you're filling up the calendar, I think there's some filters that you can set up to ask yourself as you're filling up the calendar, whether that fits. Does this fit our unique purpose? Does this fit our current goals? Does it fit the processes that we've laid out? And do we have the time? Do we have the money? Do we have the passion to do this well? And I would challenge you that some of these, you could make a case for probably almost anything a church could do. But I want you to drill in and figure out, is this what we should do? Based on the goals, the why, the uniquenesses that we laid out, can we do this best? Can we reach the people that we want to reach best with this event? Or is it better served with something different? Because again, maybe the answer is not to do more, but to do less with more intentionality. Mm. And in fact, while you're planning, I want to challenge you to consider rest. Consider vacations. Maybe as you're planning this calendar year, you need to put team member vacations on the calendar so you can make sure that those actually can happen, so that people can rest and restore and come back refreshed. Maybe you need some thank you events. If you had a big push and got all your volunteers involved in pushing for Easter, maybe sometime after that, you should do an event to thank them or to offer some rest. Again, these are just some principles, some guidelines. You'll never be done revising these. This needs to be an ongoing conversation because things are always changing. And speaking of change, we need to talk about start planning your church-wide events 6 months out.
And all of the creative team leaders are currently screaming at their computer, "My pastor will never do that." Like delete. So.
But and again, we've talked about this, so I'll just mention it again. You can be proactive.
Right.
Your pastor may not be ready to plan 6 months out, but you can be. You can start bringing those ideas up. You can start collecting ideas you think will work. You can curate them so that the executive team doesn't have to go find it on their own. You can do the research. You can bring some plans up and refine that with them.
Yeah, and make that research fun, all right? It doesn't have to be just a drag. And if it's July and you want to plan Christmas, man, throw in some hot cocoa and a Santa hat and some Christmas music, and everyone get into the room and be like, what should we propose? What are a couple good ideas that we could create this Christmas? 6 months from now is back to school. So in the next couple of weeks, plan what you're doing for the back to school. Plan a meeting. Put a meeting on the calendar to plan it and make that meeting fun. Put on some board shorts and a backpack and be like, what are we doing in fall of 2021?
Which I hear you. I hear you right now. I hear the brainwaves. You're saying fall. There's a pandemic that's still going, right? And hopefully we're on the tail end. I don't know, though. Things keep happening. And 2021 might have other surprises for us. So step number 5, pandemic-proof your church calendar. Disaster-proof? I don't know. Change-proof. Because we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. We know that the pandemic is still a factor. It's still happening. There are still lockdowns and quarantines that are happening. And honestly, there is no going back to normal from here. Normal has changed. You have people, you have 3 audiences now, and you will have them for the foreseeable future. You have digital only people. Some of them are people that are high risk and they just aren't willing to risk getting sick by going back to church anytime soon. Others are people that, they liked sitting at home and watching church from home, and they're just going to keep doing that. You have transitional people that have been digital only, but might be interested or maybe are starting to tiptoe back in church. And you have people that are hybrid, that are going to interact online and come in person. And I'm going to say that's it. There are no people that are only going to come to church. You may have had those people in the past. I don't think they exist anymore. And so you need to figure out how you're doing ministry to all of those people. How are you doing ministry? Not just copying what you're doing in service, just streaming it online, but how is ministry going to occur online as well? How can we make it feel like they are being connected to? They are there in person. Do you have options that you're proud of for giving, for worship, for discipleship, volunteer and outreach, fellowship, one-on-one ministry in a digital space? But Jason, I think there's this other question that we just can't avoid. Say it's Easter. You've got a church. They've ramped up. They've done all the planning, the set design, and everything else. They've got. I don't know. Maybe they got the goats. The live goats are going to be whatever they've got going on.
Probably goats.
Donkeys, I guess. I'm sorry, donkeys. But then something happens. There's a new lockdown. Easter is canceled, or is it? Jason, what do we do?
Well, by now we should already be set up for online communication. But here's where I think another easy step to take it, like what you're saying, from just a broadcast, right? I'm streaming my service. They can listen in online afterwards, or they can listen in live, or we're going to record it and post it. More than just a broadcast, think about digital volunteers. You said it a minute ago. Make sure you have a volunteer pipeline. Maybe some of you watching don't have that. You should have that. That's a discipleship pipeline. How do you go from I'm a part of this church, now I want to serve at this church? Then put that pipeline online where people can grow in connection and serving. Then be clear with what you hope that they would do, right? You can train up digital volunteers, people who don't even attend. They might not even live in your city, but you empower them as a volunteer to like and comment and share. And everyone's like, oh, that sounds so trivial. You know what else sounds trivial? Here, hold this sign that says welcome and open the door and smile. It's trivial. Relationships are trivial, but they mean something to people. And it'll mean something to people when you have volunteers engaging. Hey, good to see you online. Hope you're doing well. Praying for you today. This is a great message. And just interacting. You could do online training for that. You could have online groups for your discipleship, or reading through a book, or reading through the Bible together. When I was a church planner, one of the biggest catalysts for our healthy service was a pre-service rally. Meaning prior to the service, all the volunteers got together and we prayed and we heard the video. Here's what I'm preaching on today. Here's where we're headed. You're a part of this. You could do the same thing online. Have a leader get online, sometimes even live to the public, and say, here's what we're doing today. Hope you're a part. And if you're a part for the first time, or if you're a part for a second time, feel free to comment and interact. You could also do that private. Hey, volunteers, let's pray about what we're about to go and do. And what you're doing is you're involving people in more than just a broadcast. Now you've created an opportunity for real engagement and real community to be built.
So it comes down to planning ahead. If you have that plan, if everybody on your team knows what happens ahead of time, whether it's Easter or September, mid-September, whenever it happens, okay, we know what we're doing. If we have to close down some service, and that could be flooding, that could be a snowstorm. It doesn't matter anymore. You're ready to respond. And I know we've given you a lot at this point. You might feel overwhelmed. In fact, in 2020, church creative teams all over the country were constantly overwhelmed. And that's part of why we wanted to talk about this today. But it's a lot. And we have some options to maybe help with that. Jason, what do we got?
Yeah, I'd love it has been. It's been the most difficult season of ministry any of us have ever lived through. A lot of that weight has fallen to the communication team, especially, those with, digital experience, online experience. And now things are opening back up, and all the pressures of yesteryear and all the pressures of last year are all just going to weigh down. Here's step 6, consider bolstering your team by outsourcing to a creative agency. All right. So yes, that's the one pitch, but here's the pitch. We have a fantastic team of church creatives with expertise in copywriting and web design, web development, email nurture, Facebook, social, all the social media outlets, and internal church communication and graphic design and how you can best communicate. And for the cost of less than what one full-time person might cost you, you'd have access to all that team. We'd love to come alongside, help manage the projects, help you reach more people. We love it. We love serving life-giving organizations, and we love to talk to you about how we might be able to help you.
And we're not here to replace your internal team. We're here to come alongside and bring in our expertise where we can help take everything you're doing to the next level and bring a breath of fresh air really to everyone involved. But, you're listening here. I want you to recap some key takeaways here. When you plan, honestly, when you do anything, use empathy. Use empathy. That is the key to all good communication. Remember that planning is like budgeting. It's a stewardship issue. It allows you to make changes on the fly without burning through your resources. Set up your creative team like an agency. Treat your executive team and departments like clients so you can be proactive and be a consultant first. Start with your why. Understand who you are and who you're trying to reach. Let that be the framework that informs all of your planning. Plan your 3 to 5 big events first. Put in those big rocks first, and then plan department events using a 3-tier system. Well, guys, right now we've got time for some questions. And so if we've got some questions coming in, we've got a few minutes here that we'd love to tackle them.
Yeah, if you've had any questions throughout this time, go ahead and drop it in the comments there, and our team will feed that to us. We'd love to connect and do our best to answer. We have more questions than we have answers most of the time, but go ahead and drop those in the chat there.
How do we handle the last minute inspiration that leadership gets from Facebook? So the leadership gets this. I think this is coming in from Facebook here. Last minute inspiration coming in from leadership? Maybe it's Thursday. This is for Sunday. What do we do?
Well, I mentioned it earlier. Epiphanies happen, right? And I do think that'd be a fantastic bumper sticker. We need to create that. But I think your ability as a creative department to think in templates, that's what I would say, design some templates. What if you have a sermon graphic, right? Or a branded graphics, and you've created this is something that we deliver in our branding packages as well as sermon graphics, but you as a designer, you understand layered files. If you think in layered files, you think in templates, then you can also, somebody comes in and says, you know what, instead of calling it this, we're going to call it that. You can have some go-to templates. They're going to already look good. They already feel good. They already look like you and sound like you. You're not starting from scratch every time, but you're going to be able to design on brand and on message. I mean, that'd be one solution. I think, again, getting on the page with the leadership team about communication ahead of time, the better off you're going to be as well.
Here's a big one. How do you get buy-in from senior leadership on these new systems?
How do you get, well, empathy, right? Here's what I know you're headed here. Affirm the things that you know the pastor is trying to create. Don't go in there with like guns blazing, like everybody's been treating the creative agency like trash for too long. And so I got a list of no's. Okay, that's not going to get you very far. What you can do is say, hey, pastor, I know you're trying to create a healthy community here. You're trying to, and to set up boundaries for us, but also we want to do our best for our best foot forward, man. We think we can create more engaging opportunities, sell them on the big picture of reaching more people, influencing more people, creating a healthier work environment. We want to be able to say yes, yes, yes all the time, and then present that to him. Don't surprise your leadership. Go take an idea to them and say, can I craft this with your help? And then come back to them with, here's what other churches and research have done, and I've outlined it for us. What do you think? And then they're going to edit it, and they're going to talk to you about how it should be implemented. And then when it goes to be rolled out to the other departments, you'll be able to present it. And then the executive team will come over your shoulder and say, and I love this, big stamp of approval. So it's a process, but you have to come alongside their vision and in an empathetic way. Here's what I hear you wanting to create. Here's how I think we can best create that.
Yeah, and conversely, here's how you sabotage it. If you come in pointing fingers, or if you come in with your frustration, or if you come in with an attitude that is like, this is impossible, you can't ask me this, that's not going to get you what you want. Got some more questions coming in here. What if I'm the only one on the team doing everything? Does this apply to me? I would say even more so. You have an advantage here in that you know how much energy and passion and time you have. Be realistic about that. Steward your own health. Because listen, if you are burning your own self out, then you're not going to get to the end of the finish line here.
Yeah, absolutely. Another church asked, do you recommend using Slack only for your internal team, or can church members join the same Slack account too? It's a good question.
That's a good question. And the reason that we separate it, for us, we enjoy in that internal Slack communication. That's a safe place. It's a safe place where us as a creative team can give honest feedback with each other. We can present something out there and say, hey, this isn't finished yet. What does it need? Without worrying about the client, or in this case, a lead pastor or a department head saying, oh, no, that's not it. Well, we know it's not it yet. We're working on it. And so there might be a place to have that separation. And also because we want to create these systems, we want to create these understanding where we don't want that department to just come in and drop in a request wherever, say, hey, can you crank this out for me real quick? We want them to go through a process, to understand that there is a process, there is a timeline for those kind of requests. And that instant messaging format makes it easier to make things fuzzy and to just, hey, I just want to directly access my creative over here and say, hey, can you make this design real quick? And so that's where I'd recommend the separation.
Yeah, I think it's a great tool for creating teamwork and creating culture and conversation. If those team members are a part of shaping the solution, right? Because here's a big challenge every pastor wants is how do we get more volunteers a part of our communication and creativity department? Well, the answer is you got to plan ahead, Pastor. They don't want to hear that, but it's true. But then also that might be a good channel for those volunteers. But again, you wouldn't want just direct access. Discovery Christian Church asks a great question. Do you see more of a win with a collaborative meeting with several from different departments, or the communication person meeting individually with each ministry director? And great question. I have been in so many meetings that I could care less about, or couldn't care less about, honestly. That we're talking about someone else's ministry and it has nothing to do with and they don't even want my opinion. Why am I sitting here, right? I'm not sitting there. I'm online. I'm answering emails, and you guys some of you might be streaming this video from that meeting right now. Welcome. But here's what I want. It just depends. Like if you're talking about Christmas, you might want to pull in a few big collaborative meeting, like, guys, what all should we do? Absolutely. But if you're talking about the youth group, then just meet with the youth pastor. Talking about, unless he wants to do a thing with the kids pastor because they want to do a combined kids and youth experience, fine. But if it doesn't involve them, don't involve them.
You know, I've seen some questions about Microsoft Teams versus Slack. From what I've not used Microsoft Teams personally, but from what I've seen, it does the same thing. You could use it the same way. So if your organization's on Teams, great, use it.
Yeah. From Instagram earlier, what's the best way to be prepared for emergencies? We may have covered that already. Sickness, leadership change.
Best way to educate leadership on what a task involves. This is a big one. And this is where, I mentioned time tracking earlier. That can be a tool. If you have that data, then you can have that. You can have that to show, hey, look, this is how long it takes. That way the leadership knows when they're coming in for that last minute ask, whether they're asking a 2-hour ask or a 20-hour ask. And so that's, but if you have data, some leaders are going to like data. Some leaders may have pushback, like, okay, well, it was 20 hours last time. Can we do it in 10 hours this time? But you need to have boundaries. I'm going to say this. I think this is just universally true, especially for creatives. You need to be able to have boundaries for yourself to remain healthy, to say, no, look, to do this kind of task takes me this long. I can't do that. To have boundaries where you're able to say for yourself, I'm not going to stay up till 3 a.m. tonight to do that because I need to be healthy as a person, or I can't be who I need to be. Now, maybe that's controversial. I know that with churches in particular, it can feel like, well, this is working for God, so of course I should say yes to everything. And I'm going to say that's not always true. There's a time to say no. Right,
which takes us in. The answer to most of this is planning ahead, right? If you want to prepare for emergency, sickness, or leadership change, you got the more planning you can do, the more proactive planning you can do. If this happens, then I'll be ready with that. Tiffany Varner asks, how do you keep entire creative department staffers with a healthy workload? Well, that the last question that Kirk was answering leads really right into that. Time tracking, that challenge, inspiration, also rest. I would say half of our conversations, maybe it's less, but it feels like about half, Kirk, when we're coaching, encouraging our creatives to take their abilities to the next level, we're actually talking about drinking more water, going on walks, turning your computer off, not doing push notifications, right? I mean, probably half of the principles that we want to help inspire creatives to be more efficient and more effective with their time. Healthy workload, because they're helping lots of fantastic clients with compelling vision all over the country. We're actually talking about how to live a healthy life. Half of the time, take your vacation, right? Go on date nights. Like we're encouraging those kinds of wins, not just how can we get more out of you faster. And I think that has to be the future of the church.
Right. And, there's studies, we could talk all day about this because we're passionate about this, but the studies show you work more than 50 hours in a week, your productivity actually drops beneath what you would have accomplished if you had stopped at 40 hours. And so pushing harder, working more, that doesn't get you what you want. All right, last question. How far out are you planning? How far out should you plan? 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? The calendar that we made is 18-month calendar, because obviously if we're saying that our big events take 6 months lead up, then you may need to plan now so that you're ready for that. Because if your first big event is 6 months from now, well, then you've got a year from there. Jason, obviously more is better, but where can you start?
Well, you have to start with where you're at. I think the first day I was in the office as a communication director at a regional multi-site, and those of you that are on staff there, the treadmills in those places are turned up pretty fast, right? So you jump on and you're starting to run, and I show up to the meeting. It's the communication meeting, and it's a Tuesday, and they were planned out, for Sunday, that coming Sunday. And so the next week I thought, let me bring some ideas for 2 weeks out, and then 4, and then, hey, now that we've got the whole month is planned now, what do you want to preach on in the months to come? And then we started planning 2 months out, and then 6 months out, and then they changed things, and then we would plan 2 months out, and then 6 months out, and then 12 months, and we have at least an idea of where we're headed. Some people go on retreats. I mean, again, as far out as you can, but you have to start with where you're at. I think Cammie also had another question. I'm going to sneak it in because she asked, what is your definition of engagement? And I think this is central to planning. This is where it all rubber hits the road, because we're in ministry, right? We're talking about communication and not just calendars for the sake of clicks, for the sake of a sale. We're talking about getting in relationship with people, being in a relationship, being in a conversation with somebody. I remember when I was a young adult, pre-ministry, right? And I was attending a young adult ministry at a church, and I walked in one weekend, and there was a very attractive other young adult there, and I just wanted to get in a conversation with her. And I knew then 2 weeks later, she was tasked to call people and get them to sign up for a volunteer day. And I knew who it was. And I just knew, okay, I'm going to say yes to this because she's asking, and I just have to keep this conversation going. And so, today we've been married 17 years and have 2 kids. All right. So the engagement, just get a conversation going. It doesn't have to lead to marriage, but it does need to lead somewhere. Just get people talking. If it's online, that might be likes and comments and shares, but I would not just in a like, comment, and share or a click conversation. The real goal is connection. The real goal is relationship, because ultimately the real goal is lives changed.
Well, that's it right there, and that's a great place to wrap it up. We're out of time, but a few last things before we sign off. Want to get you some resources that will help you plan your year, make your staff feel healthier, yourself healthier, more creative, do more things in your context. So check out the article on our website, How to Create a Church Planning Calendar. There's a lot of the same material we covered here in written form. And then watch your email for 3 giveaway links, an 18-month printable wall calendar created based on the calendar Jason had when he was a creative director. If you print out all 18 pages, put them on the wall, 3 across, 4 down, makes a pretty cool pattern. We like that as a designer. A creative department planning calculator. We'll email you this link in the next few days. Plug in the date of your event and all the deliverables you're going to need, and that'll tell you when to have that kickoff meeting, when you need to have each thing done in order to be all set by the time you're ready to start promoting. And finally, we'd love to connect with you with a free 30-minute calendar planning consultation with one of our strategists. Jason, that's your team. Could you tell them what that looks like?
Well, it's all about you. It's all about your context. We want to learn about your context and your ministry. We want to find out where you could go, maybe offer some fresh ideas, and we'll just dream with you about all the things that you could accomplish this year. That link for that free 30-minute consultation is going to be in the email also that you receive after this. And man, just such an honor. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can get in touch with us anytime by replying to that email that you're going to get after being a part of this webinar, or you can always go to artspeakcreative.com. Thank you. Peace.